Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Future of Media panel. This is very kindly being hosted by our friends at MediaTel. And we are going to be covering this morning how outdoor is facing up to a programmatic future. And our panel joining us, my name is Nigel Clarkson. I'm the Global Chief Revenue Officer for Hivestack, and I'll be your host for this morning. We have, in no particular order, Deirdre Ubels, who is the founder and CEO of Sage & Archer. We have Alice Donnelly, the Head of Commercial Delivery at Kinetic UK, Ali McCallum, the CEO of Kinetic UK, and Helen Mile, who is the CMO of View. And when we're putting this panel together, we wanted to make sure that we got some really kind of diverse areas of expertise in the industry. I'm really excited about the panel. Deirdre runs a cross-channel DSP operating in mobile, online and digital out of home. They're headquartered in Amsterdam. So he's bringing some other channel and international experience to the panel. Ali's the CEO of the UK arm of the world's biggest outdoor specialist, and he has 20 plus years of experience in sort of big media agency leadership roles. So he's going to bring a big holistic view across sort of all channels. Alice has been tasked with leading Kinetic UK's digital and technology capabilities and brings with her serious digital pedigree from years at Google, GroupM's Axis. So she's a proper programmatic person. So all technical answers will be directing to you, Alice. And Helen is the CMO of View, and again brings with her a real sort of client-facing and positioning view for programmatic out of home, and has got an incredible pedigree again in senior marketing roles, including Microsoft, Turn, and O2. So thank you all for joining us. It's a brilliant panel. Very excited to crack straight on. And so with the title being The Outdoor is Facing Up to a Programmatic Future, I think just an open question for all of us to warm up quickly is, what are the main advantages? People are talking about programmatic out of home, but why are clients doing it? Why should they be aware of the advantages that that channel has? And maybe Ali, if we could start with you on that, please.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Nigel. I mean, the interesting thing about out of home has been the technological advancements that we've seen in the last couple of years, which have really, I think, revolutionized how we plan and transact. And programmatic is one aspect of that. I try not to see it in isolation from either sort of classic out of home buys or smarter behavioral audience-led digital buys. But what I think programmatic is going to really help us with next year, and I'll let the others talk about the more technical aspects of it. But for me, fundamentally, as we move into a world where I think planning cycles are getting ever shorter, clients want much smarter returns on their investment. They want better application of data and greater creative dynamic opportunities. I think having a programmatic ecosystem for out of home really enables us to demonstrate the power of the channel as not just a sort of brand building and trust building channel, but also an activation channel, bringing the sort of public and the private screen together. The one thing I'm always conscious of reminding people is that programmatic out of home is still a one-to-many opportunity. It does allow us to be more targeted and reach more specific audiences, but it's never going to be programmatic in the pure sense that we've seen in pure play digital. But I think that's also an advantage, because that is one of the key strengths of the channel, in that, you know, it's universal reach in a world where it's getting ever harder to reach large groups of people together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess bringing in sort of Deirdre and Alice, particularly where you come from a solid sort of programmatic background, you know, there is a change, isn't there, from a one-to-one to one-to-many channel. Why, you know, what are the advantages for you, having come from more of a traditional online or mobile programmatic space and come into out of home? Maybe Alice, if we start with you, and then Deirdre, we'll move on to you, please.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a really kind of important piece for us at the moment. And I think what we're seeing clients really respond to is the increased opportunity for agility and deployment. So we see this especially around kind of COVID-19 at the moment. So the capacity to be able to upweight and downweight delivery, to be able to use data in smart ways to actually really add genuine value for the client in how their campaign is being deployed is a real advantage for clients, which has been slightly more challenging to achieve kind of with potentially a more classic version of the out-of-home space. So I think clients are really kind of catching on to new capabilities in flexibility and deployment, upweighting, downweighting, being able to be a little bit more sophisticated in the application of data to actually drive kind of a valuable outcome for the client. I think those are kind of two really key things that clients are really latching onto at the moment.
Yeah, so data and outcomes, and we will cover those a bit later for sure. And Deirdre, you have a very client-facing sort of business in terms of out of home, in terms of mobile and online. So what are you talking to your clients about the advantages of out of home and bringing those two together?
Well, we see, first off, we see a lot of different types of buyers coming to out of home. I think the industry, because of opening it up in this programmatic infrastructure, we see obviously we have traditional buyers that move into buying programmatically as in addition to what they've done in the past. But we also see a lot of smaller digital agencies that focus more on outcome-based buying move into this space and actually figure out that that this is a very interesting channel for them as well. And especially the more advanced digital buyers that not only run their campaigns focused on one-on-one attribution measurement, what we've traditionally seen in the programmatic space, where much of the buyers were really focused only on performance and didn't really care where they run their ads, only want to focus on the results, on the outcome of it. Especially the more advanced buyers who see what channels drive incremental value to their performance layers. They're also very much using out of home as an additional, an incremental channel to the stuff they've done in the past. And especially like from our end, we come from mobile, so we have a lot of app-based clients basically that use out of home buying to basically run outcome-driven campaigns, and they see it actually works for them when they use smart data and the infrastructure that programmatic offers to increase performance. So yeah, so it's interesting to see that you don't necessarily. I think digital has come to a point also with the crumbling of the cookie, and on mobile we see the depreciation of the mobile ad identifiers. Is that more and more advanced digital buyers are looking to what channels drive incremental value, not on a one-on-one basis, but from my whole customer basis. And especially those types of clients are really enthusiastic about the infrastructure programmatic has to offer, and they see fantastic results.
And when you talk about the fact that there are different channels and we're trying to understand the sort of the outcomes that they drive, do you envisage that we will work in partnership and out of home with mobile, or do you think that eventually they'll become competitive channels based on results?
In partnership, we see the best results come when they run both. And we've been able to measure a bunch of results just using, like, looking at it from a channel point of view, saying if I only do mobile, if I combine mobile with digital out of home, what happens then? And we see tremendous increase in results. But we're only at the start of that whole field, I think. And now we're looking at, does the channel work? But now the next question will be, what can I do to make the channel even work better for me? And what combination, what frequency, what creative, what optimization stuff should I put into this put into the campaign? And sure. Programmatic obviously has all the buttons to work with, and that's I think the next phase we're coming into right now.
Excellent. And we will come back to the brand performance because it's a really important area for us. And Helen, I mean, you are tasked, you work for a global out of home ad tech business. You are tasked with, as a CMO, of understanding how we position that both sort of to our own industry, to our supply partners, to demand partners. How, what are you guys selling? What's VU selling as the main kind of advantages of programmatic out of home right now?
Well, I'd say there are four. So there's the flexibility that it gives you, as a brand, particularly in times when there is less certainty or the situations are changing, government lockdowns are coming in at short notice. You really need to be agile as a brand, and programmatic gives you that flexibility to start, to stop, to pause your campaign based on the changing, environment. And that's a real key benefit that we are hearing back from brands that they really appreciate. There's also the value aspect, because it is making it more accessible to lower brands potentially, because you don't necessarily have to always have the biggest campaign budget, I would say, but also you're able to optimize in campaign, mid campaign, to really drive the efficiencies that you've got. And then the third thing, which has already been mentioned, is the accuracy that you can achieve in the targeting. Again, that ability to understand during the campaign which sites are performing, using the same audience data, through your DSP that you're using on your other channels. Because let's not forget that the person who's viewing all of this amazing creative is the same person across channels. So surely you want to have that sort of cohesive omni-channel strategy in mind when you're doing your campaign planning and activation. And then the final element is really the trigger-based activation that you can do. So setting around, weather or different sports events or whatever the criteria is, you can use that to really only deliver the campaign when it's right for your brand. So you're minimizing the wastage, I would say.
Yeah, really, really good points. And I think that ability to turn on and turn off has been particularly useful, I think, in the very challenging year that we've had in out of home, for sure. So I've got one question I'm going to point at each of you very quickly. So we've announced this week we've launched in Latin America, multiple partnerships signed, Canada, APAC, the US in literally the last couple of weeks. So it's safe to say we're all in a pretty interesting area now. It seems to be taking off massively, and it's taking off really quickly. But I don't really understand. I don't know if we understand why. So I'd like to quickly dig into why. We've had digital screens. I left PrimeSite 13 years ago. We had digital screens, and there was the promise of programmatic and automation then, and it didn't quite happen. So Ali, with your sort of holistic view of the market and having come from an agency background where programmatic was deeply woven into the very fabric of agencies planning and buying, why now? Why is it suddenly kicking off in out of home, do you think?
I think historically there were a lot of legacy perceptions around out of home as a channel, and I think people weren't truly aware of the capabilities. I mean, I joined the industry just over a year ago because I believed, and still do, that the transformation that was taking place was going to see a huge shift in the role and resulting growth of the channel. And going into COVID, we'd seen a real explosion in the development of tech, data, and creative capabilities. And sort of 18 months ago, I think we first started transacting, in a programmatic way. So 2020 always felt like it would be a huge step change. Obviously, the industry's taken a massive hit this year, but there's been a real acceleration of change as a result. We have learned this year just how much of people's lives is spent living out of the home, socializing, shopping, following passions, going to gigs and events. As and when that returns, the channel's better placed than ever to thrive. And I think there's a greater understanding of that. And also, I just think one of the things that's happened this year is we've had to prove that out of home can be planned and transacted with immediacy and in near real time, and to be able to respond to things as they happen, and the needs of brands, and to be able to pause and optimize campaigns. And so I just think the truth is it's hit that pivot point where I think we've articulated what programmatic out of home can do, and automated buying. And that's come at a time where there's just been a huge demand for it. And I think, that will continue into next year, because we are, as I said, the planning cycles will be ever shorter in every channel. Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess it's easy for us to look at what's happened with the pandemic and outdoor, because obviously with cinema, we've been affected terribly by it, and assume that the change is only happening with us. But I agree. I think that, the short-term flexibility required by clients is going to go right through every channel. And you made I was just going to say, Nigel, the other thing is that the client perceptions were always that out of home was a long lead time channel. And I think more of them, there's still more work to do, understand that that's not the case anymore. So we have seen, Alice and her team have delivered some pretty significant scale in terms of campaigns that they've run through either through the DSP or automated guarantee product. So, there's been a step change in scale as well as, just understanding, I think. Yeah. And a really good point on scale. I throw that straight at Alice. You guys work in the same place, so don't want to get you disagreeing. But some of us come from a more traditional background where, we talk about the principles of brand awareness and shifting brand perception. And programmatic, certainly when it first started,
was all about micro-targeting, data, personalization. And we've talked about the fact that the outdoor channel is one-to-many, not one-to-one. So it's always going to be hard to get to the same levels of personalization. And I think the industry is probably a little bit nervous that we go from, what makes outdoor a brilliant channel is scale. And it is that very public nature that you cannot avoid a bus, a 48 sheet, a big 6 sheet on the high street when you drive past. What do we have to do to make sure that we bring people with us on the brand and performance sort of story? Because it has to do both, right? We can't just suddenly go down we used to talk at Weave back in the day, Helen, about sort of the left-handed vegans in Sainsbury's at 2:30 on a Wednesday. Can you target that audience segment? You probably could, but actually, does that play to the strength of the channel? And coming from your pure play programmatic background, Alice, what are your thoughts on can we remain as a branding medium and just do it smarter? Is that the ambition?
I think it's about having balance, really, and I think it's about understanding where out of home is really, really strong, and where we can marry the bits from the programmatic world that add value and are helpful to both kind of people on the street and also to clients. So I think for us, where out of home can be really powerful in this space is the beauty of really strong creative messaging, getting really specific around that. So using the power of context. So where are you in relation to a particular store? Can we encourage you with messaging around how close you are or what's available in that store to try and encourage you to go in? So it's around using context to kind of help drive certain actions for a client, but also kind of not losing sight of that wider audience piece. So I'd say it's around boxing a bit more cleverly with identifying your audience. So you don't want to go down to men in Leeds who drive a Volvo and like jazz. That's very specific and it's not really going to work in our medium. But there is greater specificity you can get to than just ABC1 adults. We know this. It's about getting a sensible mix of an appropriate audience and then using the new tools at our disposal, using the data we've got, find that appropriate audience, and then activate in context. Marry those two things together to really harness what out of home does really well. Being outside in the moment when people are out and about and able to take action with what you want them to do, whilst also using additional data to get that bit closer. So I think for me, it's around a sensible audience that goes beyond ABC1 adults and also using creative and the data that we've got to apply context in an appropriate way. Yeah. So I think it's that balance between the two. So we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of kind of pure play display programmatic. We know that won't work for us, but I think it's going beyond kind of a one to everybody to one to more of a few, if that makes sense.
One to more of the right people. And I guess, that debate is very live in the whole sort of media marketplace, right, around Byron Sharp and what is the right percentage to put into brand and performance. Do you envisage that?
Nigel, just to add something to what Alice was saying, we talk a lot at Kinetic about what the future of marketing looks like. And I think more than ever, brands need to build trust and get to customers and do things publicly. And if you can have a sort of programmatic ecosystem that underpins that and delivers more specificity, easy for Alice to say, not me, but if it can deliver much more granular targeting in a place that's 100% brand safe and visible, alongside what marketers do and brands do on the private screen with mobile, etc., I think that's the balance that we'll see more of going forward.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's just, do we envisage where this debate seems to be happening in the wider marketplace is around there's a percentage goes to brand, a percentage goes to performance, and it all feels very binary and different brands have different splits. And I just wonder whether, do we think we'll get to a point where the same brand will say, right, I've got some performance money, so that's going to go into the programmatic out of home bit, and I've got some brand money, which is the more traditional sort of out of home plan and buy, and there'll be, or do we envisage that the programmatic piece could potentially do branding as well? Because it's actually, as Alice said, you can still do a programmatic story at scale.
Absolutely.
Can I comment on that? Oh, sorry.
Yes, please. Sorry, we'll come back to you, Helen.
Okay.
So this is exactly the trend we see with more advanced digital buyers, and I think that's one of the accelerants also why programmatic out of home is now picking up so fast as it is. I think that more and more teams that are also responsible for building brands are focused on digital, right? And they use these types of, and are accustomed to use these types of tools to buy their media, and understand that there's a balance between brand and personalization, between brand and performance, but figured out in what way they could use infrastructure for both ends, for both goals, really. So this traditional split, at some clients we still see this, where the digital team is responsible only for the performance buying, and then when there's a brand campaign, there's a whole different team that uses their own tooling or uses their own methods of determining what works for them.
Yeah.
But we increasingly see clients that have a digital team that's also responsible for all the stuff that's being done on brand. And they're accustomed to using these types of tooling, and I think that's a big reason also why this is picking up right now.
And my next question was exactly that to you, which was, when you've created the platform that you've created, which is maybe from the outside more about performance, because it can be, right? So with mobile and online, most sort of DSPs and platforms in that space generally started sort of maybe 6-7 years ago, very much pure play performance. And then of course, we don't just want to stay in a performance bucket. You want to understand how you grow that, and digital can still do a brilliant branding job. It feels like the industry hasn't steered it that way enough. So I was keen to understand how you're managing your evolution into an out-of-home business. How are you positioning it to clients? So we've done some brilliant performance stuff, but now we're working in this channel, which is kind of brand, but we're going to bring a bit of performance in. Is that your general kind of pitch to clients?
Well, I think this ties into the question about what's the role of programmatic and what things have we seen in the past that didn't work or that we should try to avoid. And basically what we've seen is that you have on the one end, you have the data only play, right? So if you buy via DV360 or via Facebook, you set out to get to a certain KPI, and it doesn't really matter where your ads are running, only if you just get that KPI, right? And that has led, I think, to a lot of, has led to a bad reputation for programmatic advertising to begin with. So where we position ourselves, and we have been doing this for a couple of years, and it hasn't been easy in the past, is that we say, okay, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be quality, it needs to be professional content. Because you're never going to win as a tool, you're never going to win the competition with Google and Facebook if it comes to data, right? The amount of data they have to drive performance is, it overwhelms every other company in that space. So we already in the past moved towards a position where we said, okay, if you don't care where you run your ads and you're only focused on the KPI, which a whole chunk of the digital budget is reserved for, then use those types of tooling. But if you want to know which apps you run your ads in and want to have transparent reporting on it and know exactly what the deal is you made with the publisher and have this direct relationship without any weird deals in between, then you can use our tooling to do that and still be smart about what you're running, and still be smart about how the media buys you do drive incremental value. It's not that programmatic is only focused on this KPI buying, and it doesn't matter where we run your ad. You can also use a brand safe, transparent method in doing so. And I think that's where we positioned our tooling a couple of years ago. And we didn't, to be honest, like a couple of years ago, not a whole lot of clients were super interested in that type of buys, because they just wanted to drive buys focused on KPIs. But it's shifting, because more and more clients are like, yeah, I want to know where my ads are running, and it's important to realize what type of context I'm actually driving my campaigns in. So that helps us now in the out-of-home space as well, as it's even better suited for these types of or basically these transparent, context-driven types of media buys.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think a lot of out-of-homes think about how we mobilize ourselves, and actually you're bringing an existing traditional channel into your existing ecosystem. So that's really interesting insight. And Helen, sorry, you were pipped to the post by about half a second there. So brand performance is obviously a big issue for out-of-home. What are your thoughts on that area?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's not forget that the screens that are displaying programmatic out-of-home are just out-of-home screens. It's not like it's a separate section of the inventory, or, you know, frames that are in some random places. You know, you don't have that long tail inventory that you get in display. So every frame is known, the location is known up front. That's passed through in the bid request. So programmatic is the technique, it's the technology, but it's not fundamentally a different frame than you get in your other in traditional digital out of home. So all of the benefits that you get in terms of that brand building, you're still going to be able to get them, but you're just going to be able to do it much more intelligently. And so that is why I think it's not a question of saying it's brand or performance, but it's actually both, because it can do both. The screen is the screen.
Yeah.
You can still have that high impact, but actually you're just applying really clever techniques and technology to make it much more effective, you know, and eliminate wastage potentially.
I think we sometimes get hung up on words and phrases and definitions. And I think we are quite guilty of this. Sometimes everyone in the media and technology sector, we love a 3-letter acronym: DSP, DMP, SSP, you know, DCO, you name it, we've got it. But I think, to Helen's point exactly there, programmatic is a lot around automation of buying processes. Like, a lot of the fundamentals of the marketing and the media mix underneath it aren't fundamentally changing. So I think we need to be, you know, help clients understand what is the same and what is different, and where there is value add, and all those pieces. So it's not about babies in bathwater. It's very much around evolution, incremental change to drive value for the client. So it's, yeah, again, I agree with you, Helen. We need to be careful around the terms we're using to make sure we're not confusing people.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
interesting that a lot of the brands that seem to have understood it first are those direct to consumer brands that have actually been fundamentally part of the growth of the channel over the last couple of years. And they understand when they get to a point where they're maxed out on performance channels and the stack that they have there, but they're still obsessive about performance, but growing the brand and bringing new customers in, that out of home is just another aspect to that overall mix that brings something different, but now has all the fundamentals, as we spoke earlier, that they're used to using. So it's I think that's another reason why we're seeing that growth start to escalate quite quickly now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hosting remotely is obviously a lot more difficult than doing it in person, but I could see Alice furiously nodding when Helen said it's just a technique. So I was going to bring her in. It's good timing. Thank you for that, Alice. Right, so we've got about 5 minutes, which has gone very quickly. I feel like we could keep going for another couple of hours, but just let's finish with one nice one around what are you most excited about for sort of programmatic. Let's look to the future, because let's face it, 2020 has been a bit of a stinker of a year. So we're looking forward to 2021. What are we most excited about for sort of the programmatic out of home space, or give us one prediction that we can look back with MediaTel in 12 months time and see where we got to. So who was last? And Deirdre, why don't you start us off as a kind of what you're most excited about, or a prediction for 2021? We have to go quickly, please.
Yeah, sorry. So most excited I'm about the capabilities for HTML5. So basically using creativity more dynamically in the out-of-home space. That's, I think, is also brings a lot of impact, a lot of very cool, creative, and nice responses from consumers. But I think we talk a lot about the infrastructure in our business. We love our abbreviations, as you said, Alice, very nicely. You know, more abbreviations the better. But I think for my prediction for 2021 would be, and where I'm most excited about, is that we'll start to learn how to use this infrastructure. So obviously, a lot of things are the same, and it's just technology that changes. But it also brings a lot of opportunities to use all these variables we have within the platforms and the infrastructure in, what's the reach, what's the frequency, what type of creative, and how can I, use this infrastructure to optimize it way faster than we, in faster cycles than we did in the past. And that will also, I think, helps us understand what is effective and what is working for campaigns. And so I hope 2021 will be less about infrastructure and more about all the cool stuff we did on top of that infrastructure that worked out really nicely.
Yeah. Helen.
So I think actually there's been a fundamental shift in terms of people's patterns of behavior. I don't think that we're going to go back, because there's such a understanding now that people can work remotely. So that sort of, I guess, Monday to Friday commuting, that pattern may never come back. And what it means is that actually programmatic, in terms of being able to use data and understand, in much faster, in potentially real time, through mobile data, being able to use that in your campaign planning for your out of home is going to be fundamentally important. So I think there's going to be, continued use of mobile data, and that only feeds programmatic, in terms of the flexibility and agility and targeting that you can get, because I don't see that a lot of people, well, I don't see the majority of people necessarily in businesses, bouncing straight back on the 2nd of January to a Monday to Friday in the workplace as we were.
Yeah, agreed. Alice?
I'll keep it really simple. I've got 3 things: increased supply, increased diversity of supply, more creative opportunities, and a potential to look at genuine cross-channel activation.
Brilliant. Hear to all of those. Ali, no pressure. Sign us off with some brilliance.
I just think that, I agree with what everybody said. I think it's the role that programmatic will play in the overall understanding of out of home as being smarter, more adaptable and faster going into 2021, which I think will help. We are projecting growth next year, possibly 25% upwards on this year, which won't be hard given the year we've had. But it's the role that programmatic will play in that, and in a channel that people's perceptions of will change even further in the next 8 to 12 months.
Brilliant. Well, sadly, we're out of time already. Half an hour panel went very quickly. We've covered so much. We've covered brand, we've covered public versus private screens, agility, deployment, outcome-based buying and performance, flexibility, value, creativity, trust. And I think the programmatic is the technique, not the channel. I think probably sums up this session better than others. I just want to say a big thank you to all of you. You're brilliant partners of ours, and I think that together there's going to be some really exciting development opportunities coming in 2021. So fingers crossed that we do deliver that growth, Ali, and thank you very much everyone for your time. It's been a really interesting panel.